you know, what are the things that we can alter now in the first 6 to 9 months? I spoke about this last week as well, that in the short term, we're going to start to look at what easy zoning changes we could make, and this is one of them. In the same vein that the ones that on Burdick Street that were on the consent agenda tonight were looking at the districts that exist right now and working to make changes to prevent either problematic development that isn't in line with the vision or just to clean up what is no longer appropriate in that location.
Question.
Sure.
There's some concern from the people who spoke earlier about the possibility of residential use in this area. I don't think it's likely to be very attractive, but what can you say to reassure folks who worry about possibility of complaints from people who move into an area and perhaps not realizing that they moved next to a place that has that grinds scrap and so on and so on?
Well, so a couple things. There are a variety of residential structures that already exist in the surrounding area. If you go down any one of the streets off Kings Highway, you will find little pockets, the small neighborhoods of single-family homes and homes that have been divided into apartments. So off on the edges surrounding the corridor, there's already residential that exists. You are correct that CMU does allow for residential as a mixed use, you know, on upper floors. You know, I think that if a development were to come forward, I mean, what all the city could do is make sure that we're very clear in what exists around it and go forward that way. It's hard to say how I could control what would happen in the, you know, how someone thinks about something in the future.
Well, I appreciate you being careful about that, but anybody who's aware of the property can well imagine that as for a new development for residents is not anybody's first choice.
They also, there are a variety of permitted uses in the CMU district beyond residential.
Yes.
So there's a variety of other options that could, in theory, be put, that could be developed in that location.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kuhn.
So the gentleman that came to the microphone, they seem concerned about whether that's going to affect their business. Do you see that restructuring this, even if we put in some kind of a residential thing, is that going to affect their businesses?
As I mentioned before, that corridor has a variety of businesses that exist, of a variety of different types, and they all seem to exist in harmony now, and that's the perspective. I mean, that's how I can answer the question, is that they exist right now. That corridor is a whole bunch of different things, and leading into our downtown, where it becomes more solidly commercial. So it is certainly an area that transitions from industrial into commercial.
Other questions? Thank you. Is there further discussion? Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Item E2, I will now open a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed fiscal year 2018 budget for the City of Kalamazoo. Anyone wanting to speak on this item, step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action, there's no action tonight on that item. It will come back the 2nd of January for the first reading. Second? For the approval. Okay. Any questions? All right. Mr. Manager, the consent agenda, please.
We have 13 items on the consent tonight. First is the approval of a professional service agreement for traffic technical services with Traffic Tech Services, LLC, a company owned and operated by city retiree Brian Burlingham. Next is the approval of a contract with LD Dosa and Associates, Incorporated, for Frays Park improvements in the amount of $164,000. Next is the approval of a 12-month maintenance contract with Hexagon Intergraph Corporation in the amount of $172,319.02 for the continued maintenance of the city's computer-aided dispatching, records management system, and mobile data computing systems. Next is the approval of the purchase of a LED video display board for Homer Stryker Field from Daktronics Company in the amount of $250,000 through the National IPA Cooperative Contract. Next is the approval of a one-year contract extension with Consumers Concrete Corporation for mixed concrete in the amount of $334,375. Next is the approval of a one-year contract extension for gasoline and diesel fuel with Kalamazoo Oil Incorporated for an amount not to exceed $600,000. Next is the approval of a contract with the Michigan Department of Transportation for the Vine Street Improvements Project from Davis Street to Westnedge Avenue in the amount of $628,930. Next is the approval of a professional services agreement with Prine and Newhoff Incorporated for professional engineering services associated with the city's wastewater and stormwater asset management program in the amount of $2 million. Next is the first reading of an ordinance to rezone 243 parcels located between West Lovell Street and Stockbridge Avenue from zones CC, CN1, and M1 to zones CCBD, CN1, and C2, and RM36, and to schedule a public hearing for January 2, 2018. Next is the adoption of a resolution setting the schedule of regular city commission meetings for the 2018 calendar year. And next is the approval of a second agreement to the interlocal agreement funding the Kalamazoo County Consolidated Dispatch Authority. And next is the approval of a 2017 COPS hiring program award from the U.S. Department of Justice in the amount of $1,375,000. And finally, the appointment of D. Neil Bramer to the Public Media Network Board of Directors as City of Kalamazoo representative.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to approve items 1 through 13 and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Moved by Commissioner Urban,
Second.
supported by Commissioner Cooney. LeBron James, yes, okay. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Cunningham. Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. I forgot to recognize the scouts in the house tonight. I was remiss in not doing that. Thank you guys for coming. Hope you enjoyed all this. We'll be swearing you in as public safety officers or our chief someday. Thank you. Regular agenda, Mr. Manager.
Item G1 is the adoption of an ordinance to amend Section 2-237B of the City Retirement System Ordinance to permit general member employees with credited service with a reciprocal governmental unit to use such prior service to avoid the reduction in pension amount if they retire with 25 years of credited service, but less than 62 years of age.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wanting to comment on G1? G1, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Vice Mayor Knott,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Sykes. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G2, Mr. Manager.
Next is the adoption of an ordinance to amend Section 22-42 of the Kalamazoo City Code regarding the purchase, consumption, or possession of alcoholic liquor by a minor.
And anyone in the audience wanting to comment on this item, please step forward. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Sykes,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Anderson. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson. Yes. Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. G3, Mr. Manager.
Adoption of an ordinance to permit the temporary continued operation of certain medical marijuana facilities in the city.
Anyone wanting to comment on this item, please step to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes. Give us your name and whether you live within the city. Seeing no one, Commissioners, the requested action is a motion to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cunningham,
Support.
supported by Vice Mayor Knott. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes.
Mayor Hopewell.
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. Motion carried. Item G4, Mr. Manager.
Review of the slate of 10 sector representatives for the Foundation for Excellence Board of Directors being recommended by the FFE Governance Facilitator, the Kalamazoo Community Foundation.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Is there a report this evening?
Yeah, I'd like to call forward Carrie Pickett-Irway from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. She's going to give a presentation on their process for selecting the stakeholder candidates.
Good evening, Madam President.
Good evening, Mayor Hopewell and Commissioners, City Manager. It's my honor and privilege to share with you the result of a lengthy process. Before I get started, I thought I would just highlight a couple of things from the process and the product that we are most proud of. First is the deepening and the strengthening of the relationship between the City of Kalamazoo and the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. We really appreciate the opportunity to work in partnership with all of you, and I really want to lift up and recognize the exceptional city staff that we have been able to work with through this process. Really, the manager, the assistant manager, and the FFE staff have been exceptionally helpful and thoughtful in the process. So wanted to start with that. We're really proud of the abundant community leadership that has emerged through this candidate pool. We are thrilled that so many individuals stepped forward and wanted to be a part of this exciting initiative. And the depth and breadth of their experience, I think, is something we all should be proud of and excited about for our community going forward. And then lastly, I want to make sure you all know there were many people involved in this process. I have the honor of presenting it to you, but the sector leaders made a significant contribution in prioritizing the candidates, the staff at the Community Foundation, the staff at the city as well. So this is really a collective product that we're sharing with you tonight. And we look forward to being partners with you going forward in any other roles that we can provide support for in the FFE. So I wanted to start with that and celebrate what's been a great opportunity for us. So I'm going to go through the slides here and share with you, this is the overview that we're going to provide. And I'm not seeing it on my display here. Is that? That's okay, I can see it over there. So I want to talk a little bit about the governance facilitator role, and this is coming straight from the bylaws. I want to talk about the methodology, how did we get to where we are, and then the overall slate composition. We'll talk about that in general terms, and then we'll talk about the specific candidates that we are bringing forward as part of our recommendation. I want to try to get through all of the slides before we take questions, because it's possible with the layered approach that we've taken that I might be able to answer questions as I go through the slides. I'm going to be brief and quick through the presentation so we have a lot of time for discussion. So first, as we think about the governance facilitator role, wanted to be sure that we were delivering on the expectations as outlined in the bylaws and articles from the Foundation for Excellence. So our job was to coordinate the identification and the selection of stakeholders to be nominated to the Board of Directors for election, to convene members of each stakeholder group and gather their input and prioritize those individuals from within their sector. We were trying to achieve diversity across the sectors, in addition to diverse perspectives within each sector group, and ensure that the abilities to conduct the job, the role of serving as a director for the Foundation for Excellence was part of every candidate's skill set. And then the ambitious goal of trying to seat the board to be constituted within 60 days of the IRS determination approval. So we were really focused on creating a process that was expeditious but never compromised on quality. So that's what we set out to do. Our methodology started with recruitment. We did have an open nomination application process of 21 days. We used both online and paper forms, wanting to be intentional about removing technology as a potential barrier to candidates. We used both social and traditional media, news releases, trying to spread the word as broadly as we could. But in addition to that, we wanted to make sure that we were using direct outreach. So we were working with over 120 local nonprofit organizations, for-profit companies, to make sure that the word was getting out to sectors and to networks that may not be directly connected to the community foundation or the city. And then midway through the process, we noted that there were a few sectors where the nominations weren't as robust and abundant as we would like to see. So we did a second wave of outreach so that we could be sure that we were really reaching the deepest grassroots sections of the community. So we did multiple waves where it was necessary. And then in the prioritization process, per the bylaws, we engaged leaders from each of the sectors where we were recruiting candidates. We had over 40 sector leaders participate in that prioritization process. We engaged in a collaboration call, a conference call that allowed the leaders to discuss the candidates that they were considering in their sector area, and really ask questions about experience, share firsthand information that they might have with those candidates. And then following that call, there was a ranking submission of rankings for each of the candidates, as well as comments that the sector leaders might have had on the particular candidates. Then as we were going through the slate assembly process, we had a couple of steps in that as well. We started with eligibility confirmation, making sure that the candidates that were being prioritized met the qualifications. So a lot of that had to do with the job responsibilities, but then also looking at the diverse perspectives that they were able to bring to the role. We also looked very favorably on the sector leader priorities, how they assessed and how they synthesized the information that they were receiving. And then in total, we looked at the slate composition, looking for robust skill sets, first and foremost, making sure that people had the qualifications to do the job really well, maximizing diversity within each of the sectors and across the sectors, and then looking for strong representation of the community as a whole. So we looked at all of those layers and qualifications and expectations. Then as we were nearing the end of the process, we wanted to make sure that we were capturing feedback from different points of view. So we did do a post-action review or a follow-up survey for different stakeholders in the process. The candidates themselves were asked to give us feedback on the process. 96% of them were satisfied with the process, getting the information that they needed and understanding the process that they were applying to be a part of. So responses neutral or higher, 96% of those responding. Sector leaders were asked for feedback about their role. 100% of those were neutral or higher in the feedback forms. And then we also asked for feedback from the facilitator who was facilitating the collaboration phone call, assessing whether or not that he had the perspective that that the participants on the call were able to make quality decisions, that they had been given enough information and that they were able to forward a recommendation that they felt good about. And through all of those assessments and that feedback, we identified several opportunities for improvement. A lot of it had to do with the timeline, and some of it had to do with the clarity of information. As we think about doing this process over, we learned a lot about some of the key words that might be confusing, some of the complexities with two different cycles of nomination, one from the city, one from the community foundation. So we found a lot of opportunities for improvement there. So now I'll talk briefly about the overall slate, what we think we've been able to accomplish with these particular nominations. We have 10 of 10 candidates who are eligible and qualified for the roles that we are nominating them for. 7 of 10 candidates rated highest in the sector recommendation. So as the sector leaders were convening within their sector, 7 of the 10 were the highest ranked among those. 9 of 10 were in the top 5 ranks from the sector leaders. 10 of 10 skills and attributes were represented, so every person was able to say that they are bringing skills and attributes that were required for the job. And 8 of 10 candidates are residents of the city of Kalamazoo. And as we go through each one of the candidates, we'll lift out those that are not residents and why that made sense for us as part of the overall slate. And then for the 8 candidates who are residents of the city, they represent 6 different neighborhoods from the city of Kalamazoo. So we've got some breadth in terms of the neighborhoods that are being represented as well. So the overall slate composition is we were trying to achieve the goal of diversity across perspectives. We wanted to lift up some of the demographics with this particular slate. 6 of the 10 candidates that are being nominated identify as people of color, so that's a racial or ethnic minority as they represented that on their nomination form. So that would be African American, Hispanic, Latino, Asian American, etc., biracial, multiracial as well. We also are proud to see some age diversity in this slate. So we've got 3 millennials, 5 Gen Xers, 2 baby boomers. We have some variety in terms of family composition, married, single, with and without children. We also have some gender diversity, male and female. We were really leaning towards the female representatives where we had qualified candidates, trying to complement the pool of candidates that the city is bringing for those city-appointed spots. We also have a great variety in education level, from associate's degrees through doctorate degrees. And then some diversity in terms of faith traditions. 6 of the candidates identify as Christians, 1 coming from the Jewish community, and then 3 identified as non-affiliated. So the overall composition of the slate, as we were looking at what we were trying to achieve, I'm sure you can't see any or read any of the information on there, but what the chart says on the left-hand side are the different identity markers that we would be looking at: gender, race, family status, age. The middle column is the proposed slate for the board of directors, and then to the right we're looking at the city of Kalamazoo. So we wanted to see how representative we could be of the city of Kalamazoo and how it compares in terms of age diversity, race diversity, etc. We feel pretty good about how we got in terms of parallel to some of these areas. There are a couple of categories, sexual orientation, for example, the LGBTQ applications were very few in the pool. And so, and because there's no available information about that population within the city, it's hard to tell if we're parallel to the community that we are trying to represent here. But overall, I'm feeling good about how this slate can be representative and diverse and bring lots of perspectives. So from here, I'd like to walk through the individuals who are being nominated sector by sector. And I do want to share that on the slides where there's an asterisk, these are direct quotes or paraphrasing from the sector leaders in terms of their rationale for why they nominated this individual. So the first is Alyssa Carroll. She's the nominee for the arts sector. She, of course, had 6 of 10 competencies. And so the competencies reported, this is self-identified by the candidate as they nominated themselves. And along the competencies of governance, financial leadership, etc. So 6 of 10 of those. She received the overall top rank from the sector leaders, has a broad range and diversity of genres in her arts background, which was something that was very appealing to the sector leaders, and was noted as being open-minded and committed to equity and diversity. From the business and banking sector, Adam McFarlane also received the top rank from the sector reviewers, has a background in the arts, a blend of experiences from both the nonprofit and business ownership, was noted as somebody who has his ear to the ground to the small business community, an opportunity to bring a diverse perspective there, and a strong skill set and ability to represent the sector with a unique perspective. From the education sector, Von Washington Jr. was the person who received the highest ranking from the sector leaders. His work in the K-12 education system was valued, as well as his role with the Kalamazoo Promise. He is one of the 2 candidates that does not reside in the city of Kalamazoo, but has strong and deep ties to the city with lots of relationships across multiple sectors. The faith-based sector individual who received the top ranking was Matthew Zerwecki. He has engagement and community efforts that are beyond his place of worship, which was one quality that the sector leaders really appreciated, as well as his ability to give voice to a non-majority faith. And so another layer of diversity there. Was noted as being thoughtful and committed to the common good. And then the healthcare sector, Angela Graham Williams, overall top-ranked individual by the healthcare sector leaders, background serving vulnerable families, excellent managerial experience, and extensive knowledge within the healthcare field. Board and volunteer experience demonstrated an engagement with community despite being outside of the city limits. So she's she's the other of the 2 individuals who are not city residents. And then in the housing sector, Jovan Head is the overall top rank individual from the sector leaders' perspectives, experience finding collaborative solutions to complex problems. We were also looking throughout the pool for people who had collaborative skills and a systems approach. So knowledge of community strategy development, volunteer work with a housing agency serving very vulnerable families. Unique perspective, working in a variety of families, and a commitment to anti-racism and working across socioeconomic divides. And then in the nonprofit sector, Mia Henry received the top rank from the sector leaders. Very well respected in the community, experience across sectors, collaboration and systems approach was a strength in her experience. Her experience was in youth development, education, and training, but she also has access to national networks around equity and social justice. And then the next 3 are representatives from the neighborhood sector. The first is from the Edison neighborhood, Sandra Calderon Huezo. Sandra was ranked in the top 5 from the neighborhood sector leaders. The perspective here is that she would bring a new insight from collaborations on her volunteer work with community events. She's not affiliated with a formal neighborhood organization, and what the sector leaders liked about her candidacy was the opportunity for her to have a fresh voice and potentially emerge as a new leader in the community and really strengthen her path for leadership in the community. A lot of work with the Latino community, and that perspective was something we thought would be very valuable in this composition as well. The next neighborhood representative would be Alice Taylor from the Northside neighborhood, lifelong resident of Kalamazoo, also ranked within the top 5 from the neighborhood sector leaders. Board experience as a former trustee and chairperson from a labor union, so we thought that governance perspective would be really valuable. Also has theological training and networks with the faith community, so an opportunity to bring many perspectives with just one seat. And then lastly, the 3rd and final neighborhood candidate would be Barbara Miller. She received the 2nd overall ranking from the neighborhood sector leaders, previous experience on the city commission and other elected roles. I know she served with some of you. Broad experience across multiple sectors and a lifelong resident of Kalamazoo. And so that concludes a review of the candidates and the methodology, and I'd be happy to have conversation.
Thank you, Madam President. Commissioners? Commissioner Sykes?
Well, I really want to take an opportunity to tell you how grateful I am for Community Foundation's participation in this process, how impressed I was going over the documentation that you shared with us that was in the agenda packet. how grateful I am that you all were so intentional around diversity and multiple different identity factors. I think you were in the room when we talked about it as a commission, and that was something I was really concerned about. And so to see how intentionally you all did this work has been really, really wonderful. And you all's work has brought a lot of hope to this process for me. And so very, very, very deeply from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Please thank all of your staff and all of the folks that were so engaged in this process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Anderson.
Basically, I would just like to second the comments that were made by Commissioner Sykes. Not an easy task, and I was happy to see that there were so many folks who did apply, and I think it is a brave step to, in the midst of the whole process, to evaluate yourself while you're doing it, and admit right off the bat that there's things you could have done better next time. And I mean, what can be better than that, to evaluate yourself and to really be public about that? So I appreciate that very much. I think, I know we're not taking action on this tonight, but I think I have a great deal of comfort, partly due to the fact that I didn't immediately know all these folks. In fact, many of them I did not know. And I guess if I had a concern, maybe it was going to be that we were going to see some of the similar names who are active, thank them for all that in the community, but this seems like a fresh group of people as well, and that is very heartening to me.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So as you're probably aware, our next agenda item is talking about the at-large spot. When might the foundation be able to present some of those best practices or lessons learned through the evaluation process?
We can provide those immediately. We have them, a copy of the aggregated results can be forwarded to staff tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Other Commissioner comments? Commissioner Cooney?
Well, I was just impressed how many people applied. I thought that was really great to see that there was that much interest, and it made your job harder, I think, but it was terrific the way you came up with such diversity in so many different aspects, and I thank you for that hard work.
Commissioner Urban?
Thank you. Well, I'm very impressed with the speed with which you did this, and the process that you used, which seems to be extraordinarily rigorous given the time frame you had to work with. My concern, though, that wasn't addressed in the material that I was presented and what you talked about today, this evening, is an assessment of how well this group of people are going to function together. I hope that we all keep in our minds the importance of being able to listen to one another and to absorb various viewpoints. I think that was one of your criteria, wasn't it? The ability to, one of your 10 skill sets or whatever attributes, I hope in there was some skill in group dynamics. If you'd like to elaborate on that, I'd appreciate whatever you have to say.
I would comment in a couple of ways. One of the criteria we were looking for, first and foremost, was a commitment to the mission. And so when you recruit a diverse group of folks with different points of view and different cognitive styles and different priorities and walks of life, you will have conflict. And so that's important, that's healthy, that actually helps you get to better solutions and better discussion. If you have a commitment to the mission, I think that can help to open pathways to find common ground and compromise. I think another important strategy, which is yet to come in terms of finding ways to work collaboratively together, is the onboarding process for the board. So the orientation materials, clarity about the role, the expectations that folks are signing on to. And so setting that important foundation for the work that they will continue to do is going to be really key.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, sorry. I do have another question, actually. So you mentioned some of the areas for improvement that you all identified, and I wondered if, one thing, and it's a minor thing, you know, again, you guys were very focused, it's obvious, on diversity. A couple of areas, though, I noticed we were lacking, and you mentioned them, I think, was sexual orientation, gender identity in the sense that it's 100% cisgender, and then also, I do appreciate the diversity of religion that is on the board, but I do think that's somewhere that we can improve even more. So is that one of the things you all identified? Are you thinking around some ways to maybe broaden? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I guess just to clarify, my understanding is that 9 of the 10 candidates are cis-identified. 1 did not disclose, and so we don't want to make any assumptions about their gender identity.
Thank you. Thank you.
And then, yes, I do think outreach to the LGBT community, I think, could have been more robust, more diverse representation from faith communities. That was one of the sectors where we did a second wave of outreach. And so part of the question we're asking ourselves is, was the outreach less than, or were we less successful in the nominations from those sectors because of the networks we were using? Was it the time of year? Was it the format was it the information that we were collecting? I think it could have been a combination of all of those. And where we had less diversity within a sector, we would recommend that the term of office for those particular candidates be the shorter ones, so that they would be the first to come up for reappointment if necessary, and that robust outreach could happen at a later time.
Wonderful. Amazing. Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson.
So just a question, I guess, about backing up just a little bit about the process in general. And you're aware that we still have another at-large choice to make as a commission, which is, you know, outside of our decision about this slate, is something we have to do ourselves. So depending what the numbers are and thinking about our own process, I guess it's just a general question, are you open to the possibility, if we ask, for some assistance in that further vetting that we have to do?
Absolutely. We'd be happy to be helpful. I feel like we've already, you know, traveled deeply through this process with you. Whatever information and experience we've been able to compile, we'd be happy to be helpful. It will be important for us to have clarity about what you're trying to accomplish with that particular seat. So real clarity about the goal, which of the qualities or the characteristics are most important, and then we can be helpful in any way that makes sense.
Madam President, I just want to say, wow. I remember when we talked to you about doing this, as you often do, say, well, you know, we're willing to work with anybody. But I could tell, because I've known you a few years, you were like, what in the world are you asking me to do? And now you know why we ask you folks to be a part of this, because of the nature of how seriously we knew that you were going to take this. So I have no questions about the process. I know you probably have been everything from joyous about this, and then, oh, we should have done, and oh, why didn't we do, and did you guys think, and all of that, because that's the type of work that you do every day. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I have a family situation. I need to depart. My apologies.
Excuse me, we're now on G5, approval of the process for selecting the single at-large director for the Foundation of Excellence Board of Directors.
I would like to call forward ACM Laura Lamb to help facilitate us through this process.
Good evening. What you have before you should look fairly similar to some of the material we presented to you on November 20th. In essence, what we're looking for you all tonight is to make a decision about the process by which you would like to follow to select your at-large member. In light of the conversation we just had with the Community Foundation, this would be the last seat that we're looking to fill overall for the Board of Directors. What you have before you is a memo that lays out some recommendations we discussed previously. In essence, looking at prior practice of the commission, processes that you've all used to select boards and commissions. What we have before you is the process by which, as the clerk indicated, probably the most transparent and the most public process, which looks at the process you followed in the past to fill a commissioner's seat a midterm. So with that, I'd love just to open it up for discussion and be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Sorry, I don't have a question.
Are there any commissioner questions? Commissioner Anderson.
So just in general, and just for, I guess, clarity, we have a couple parallel processes going on here. You know, we had the direct application, and we received applications that came to the City Commission through that process, and there's a number of those. And then we do have applications that were received through the process at the Kalamazoo Community Foundation that, you know, presumably would be available to evaluate as part of this process as well. So could you just help kind of talk us through, okay, how, at this point, maybe how many applications that could be altogether, and what that blending of those processes could look like from your perspective then?
Sure. I do appreciate comments by Carrie in terms of what we're learning going forward. I think when we started this process, we initiated with the Kalamazoo Community Foundation process to fulfill the stakeholder director seats. Wanted to get that going forward, and then afterwards we started off the process with the at-large. At that time, we envisioned 2 opportunities for people to indicate their interest in being involved in the board. What we realized, one, we had tremendous interest expressed through the Community Foundation's process. We tried to mirror that with the at-large, and it was clear to us a number of people might not understand the nuances between a stakeholder director seat and an at-large seat. We realized that as the processes were open for the at-large and indicated to at-large people that might be interested in the at-large spot, that if they had submitted an application through the Kalamazoo Community Foundation process, that could be counted. So we realized people didn't understand the distinction. So with that being said, I think we mentioned we had about 150 some applications coming in through the Community Foundation. We indicated to those individuals they would also be considered for at-large. We ended up having, I believe, 12 individuals express interest in the at-large seat, 2 of which did not meet the city resident requirement, so we're left with about 10 there. So all that being said, we started off talking about the potential for a rather large pool. What we're doing right now, of the 157 that came in through the Community Foundation, we wanted to make it very clear to those applicants that if their application was shared with the city, all the information contained therein would be subject to Freedom of Information Act. With that, we are giving those applicants an opportunity to opt in to the process. So far, we've heard from about 18 to 20 individuals that have expressed their interest to opt in. We gave the pool of applicants about 5 days to respond. I believe we still have about 4 days left of that. So we're waiting to see, of that large pool of applicants that came in through the Community Foundation process, how many of them would like to opt in to be considered for at-large. So all of that to say, at this point, we'd be looking at a minimum of 30 applicants for consideration. We anticipate that number could grow as we have more days passing of people indicating their interest to opt in.
Commissioner Urban, did you have a question? Okay. Commissioner Sykes.
So the process that we're voting on tonight then is, I think if I remember correctly, I don't have it in front of me, 5-step process. And I guess I think maybe your question confused me a little bit in that I'm guessing we still have to then open our process, right? I know we've already received some applications, but we're not at the point where people are done and can't submit applications anymore, right?
We actually are. So we followed a process by which similar time frame, similar outreach, really we tried to mirror somewhat of what Carrie lined out in terms of groups that we were talking with, asking all of you for your support and making sure that you pass along the applications. So we're at a point where the application process has closed. On the city at-large side, we had, like I said, about 12 individuals, if my memory serves me correctly, of which 10 were eligible based on residency. Those are individuals that said they were interested in the at-large alone. Because we recognize so many of the individuals that came in through the Community Foundation application process, we were looking to merge the pools for total consideration of the entire pool for the one at-large seat. What's before you this evening is looking for a recommendation or an action from this commission, the process by which you would like to winnow down those applications to determine who should be interviewed.
Yeah, I guess I guess I'll say this. Given that the process that we're looking at, that we're voting on tonight, which includes, you know, the way that we are doing outreach and the length of time, I mean, all of that was outlined in those steps. I guess I would have preferred, and this is probably my fault and absolutely not city staff's, because I misunderstood that we were already doing this. I thought that this would come after our decision to go through the process this way. I know that when we talked about the at-large member before, I had expressed a desire that we be intentional about where we are posting the application, how we're sharing it, what sectors of the community we're reaching. And so I guess I just sort of as a side note, I'm disappointed to hear that even though we're voting on that process tonight, and I understand what you're saying, right, that we do have to decide how we're going to go about selecting and interviewing and whatnot, and I do appreciate that. But I do wish that we had either taken this vote earlier. I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the order of this vote alongside the work city staff is doing to collect applications, but that's aside.
Commissioner Urban?
Well, as I read the material that was in our packet, it looks to me like we are already at what amounts to somewhere between step 5 and step 6. I lost the page. It has to do with the initial winnowing of the candidates. The candidates are in the pool. We have 4 more days for people to opt in who had applied through KCF. So after 4 days from now, we'll know the total pool, right?
That's correct.
So what we need to discuss now is how the winnowing is to be done, and then how the final selection is to be done. I'd like to hear some discussion about the winnowing process. At one point I heard the idea of dividing up the pool of applicants. You know, each one of us would get, say, like out of the 7 of us, each of us would get like 4 or 5 people to look at and just choose among them. I would just simply say I would rather be able to look at all of them. I'd like for all of us to be able to see the entire pool, because naturally we'll be doing a lot of comparing, contrasting, and looking for balance among the whole thing. I think it's worth us taking the time to see them all, and to then each of us, probably so as not to be deliberating in violation of the Open Meetings Act, it might be a good idea. I'm just putting this out for discussion. Each of us, say, give our top 6, say, or whatever number, that we're willing to interview. Say 6 people to interview is about all I can absorb. in interviews in the evening because people start running together. I forgot what the first person said by the time the last person talks, and that's not fair to the first person. You know, lots of things like that. So having us all look at the entire list, being able to submit privately to the clerk our top X number of people that we'd like to see interviewed, and then the clerk could then do the mixing and matching and have him end up with, well, say 6, but suppose there's a bunch of people that are just right at the edge, and it would be a shame to leave them out. So, you know, maybe it ends up with 8 total that we interview. That's as far as I can take it. I would like to hear other people respond and have this catalyze further ideas.
City Attorney.
I would urge caution about secretly submitting anything to the clerk. This process has to be done openly. It can't be done by a closed ballot.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear that right now before you make any mistakes.
Commissioner Cooney.
So we have 30 applicants right now, right, for this?
So of the applicants that came in through the at-large process, 10. We have 18 of the pool of applicants that came in through the Community Foundation process that have indicated interest to be part of that pool. So that's where we get to about the 30 estimate right now.
Okay. So to me, the question is, we may get more, right? Because there's still some more days here.
Correct.
So for me, the question is, do we just take all those who have applied and read each one of them and then rate them and say, these are the 6 that we think we would interview, do that in an open meeting, and then choose who the 6 are going to be? We have scores for everybody. That's one way of doing it. The other way would be if we get another 30 applicants and we get 60 out there, or 40 or something, do we want to ask the Community Foundation to help us winnow this down? I don't know how they would do that. I don't see another way except us reading all of them and then voting on them and in a public meeting and then interviewing those 6. So I think that's the way we have to go.
Other commissioner comments? Commissioner Cunningham.
Yeah, I would agree. I think anything past about 40 for me, I think would be a little excessive for us to look over in regards to applications, especially if we're talking about not necessarily expediting a time frame, but having a clear understanding that the sooner the better, I guess, for lack of better words. So, yeah, you know, at this point, I would want a couple things that I want to kind of ask, because I've been through this process where I was interviewed and actually received a city commission seat, so it's going to be very similar. But it was at that time, it was I think 19 applicants, and so I would rely on a lot of my seasoned commissioners. You know, what would be your insight on how you felt just doing the 19, whittling it down to 6, and then interviewing 6 on that night?
But we don't have 19. We got 28 now, and we might get more. So the only way, I don't know how we can say to the foundation, cut some of these people, give us some to read. I don't think that's fair. I think we just have to read all the ones we get, vote in a public meeting, score them, vote in a public meeting which 6 we want to interview. I think that's the way we have to do it. That's me.
I'll second that.
So I want to come up out of the weeds just a little bit here to kind of put it in context. So when are we hoping to get this done? When are we hoping to have the constituted board be able to meet? What's our general time frame we've been working within here? I know that we're talking about taking final consideration on January 16th, which is our special meeting, second regular meeting. The first one's at the very beginning of the month then. So we're talking about taking action on that evening relative to the slate that's been proposed to us from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation. Are we imagining that we could then at a subsequent meeting or at that meeting go through this process of making our own selection for at-large, and how does that tie into the bigger time frame, what we're hoping to accomplish?
So the recommendation before you, should you choose to use the process that is included, would be for you to go through, review the applications at the January 2nd meeting, to use that time to discuss the winnowing down of the pool to those individuals that you'd want to interview, and then to use the January 16th meeting to potentially conduct those interviews, which would allow at the same time you've got the 10 coming back to you for your consideration through the Community Foundation process, an opportunity to interview and then make a recommendation for the at-large member at the same time frame. In terms of your overall question of timing, we're certainly hoping to get the board up to speed as soon as we can in the new year. We do want to bring the positions of all of the board positions together at the same time, so we prefer that we keep our process moving along together. So certainly part of the conversation tonight is what time frame do you think is acceptable for you to winnow down the applications? January 2nd being a recommendation, that certainly could be up for discussion and for change.
Commissioner Urban? No, Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put this out there and say that if we have 60 applications to go over, and it sounds like we won't know the final number until the end of this week, and understanding the holiday season, and coming back on January 2nd, I am concerned about our ability to read through that number of applications in that amount of time over the holidays. So I'd like to suggest, I don't know if we can push it to the 16th meeting, or even, you know, I'm open to come in for a work session on the second Monday of the month or whatever, but I don't know that I feel good about committing to reading through all of those by January 2nd.
I'm going to jump in here and agree with Commissioner Sykes. I think that given the fact that we're at the end of December and with everything that's going on, we won't do our due diligence and give this process its full attention if we're expected to plow through those by January 2nd. Commissioner Cunningham.
So quick question, when is the first board meeting?
So at this point, we have a tentative board meeting set for April as a meeting that's required per the bylaws. That being said, what we've been working through, particularly with Steve Brown, is an orientation process and the start date to be determined. So first priority, obviously, is getting the board seated. At this point, as we said, we've tried to build in flexibility. We know this conversation has taken us on some interesting turns, and I think we're hoping to make sure that we do it right, and that as soon as we have the board identified, we would then be able to proceed with time certains on orientations, on retreats, getting the board up and ready.
Commissioner Urban.
Well, in view of what's just been said, I'd like to propose that we do have a work session then on the second Monday of January to have a public winnowing, and we use the time between when this is pool is closed, would be the end of this week. We could get the applications delivered to us to read starting as soon as possible, because for some people, the week between Christmas and New Year's is full of spare time. No one expects anybody to do anything then. So there is a possibility there, for, at least for some folks, to get stuff done. So anyway, but I recognize that having an extra week to really think it through carefully is worth it. I think the quality of our discussion we have on the second Monday will be better as a result. If that, it's just I'm asking for response or discussion on that.
Commissioner Anderson.
So I have an alternative suggestion, which if I get the sense of things, it may not gain any traction, but maybe we could put this in a context and say, for those applicants that are coming to us from the Community Foundation, if they would be willing to further vet that crew, let's say it ends up being a group of 30 or 40, that maybe they use what the work they have done, which has been pretty laudatory, I would say, and vet that crew further and bring us another candidate list of 10 of those applicants, but it would be based on a criteria that we would be clear about. So this is just another alternative saying, and maybe we should say another way we could frame that is we could say, all right, if this pool, moves to 50 from 28, we might ask for that assistance to help winnow that initial pool down, unless, if I want to set a number. Otherwise, I could go either way. If you want to go through every single application ourselves, fine. Thought that way we could kind of take advantage possibly of some vetting that has occurred already.
Commissioner Urban.
Well, I think that's a useful addition. With 28 people, I think we could probably manage it. But we could possibly have a lot more people apply now that they realize they have only 4 more days to opt in. We could set tonight the point at which we would ask the KCF to assist us. But in a way, that's also a complicating factor for them time-wise also, for KCF to do that work. And it's not part of their original scope of work. So say if the number of applicants goes above, well, someone said 40, and that's the max. We could maybe agree on that. I'm trying to, incorporate what Commissioner Anderson was suggesting.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yeah, I'd like to. I do appreciate that suggestion. I don't think it's a bad suggestion, but to me, the at-large seat, because it is a seat, it is a person that's going to be chosen by the commission. I think I would like to give all of those applications the benefit of commission eyes. I would suggest if we have so many that we can't look at them in time for a work session, that instead of winnowing it down, instead of that we give ourselves more time to adequately go through them. But I think that we should be looking at these ones. I think we should look at all of these ones.
Thank you. Are there any other commissioner comments?
I don't have any problem with that thinking at all. I agree with you basically. So is the next step for us then, I'd like to see us take action tonight on the process and leave here with the steps in place. So I'm presuming that we're comfortable with doing that. Will that include specific dates for our process? As part of our action, I think we should set this and say, okay, we will do this, and we intend to, if we're going to call a special meeting, we need to have some advance knowledge about that. So can we get there in terms of the specifics for something we can take action on tonight?
Commissioner Cooney.
No, it seems to me that we're in agreement that we should all read all of them. Is that the agreement? I'm agreed with that. I don't know. And if we say that our goal would be to have read all of them by the 9th and propose have a public meeting on the 9th where we would agree on a winnowing process, and then on the 16th vote on them? Is that what you're looking for, dates like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, how's that?
Are we thinking technically the 8th? The 8th would be
Okay.
a Monday. Yep.
8th
Commissioner Urban.
Well, I think it's important that we not wait till the 9th to agree on the winnowing process. We ought to be doing the winnowing on that special meeting.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
So we should rate them and be ready to come in on the 8th with
Yeah.
our 6 candidates.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes more sense to me.
Commissioner Sykes.
Are we at all concerned about the expectation that the 6 finalists find out that they are finalists on the, what did we say, the 8th? And then be expected to interview on the 16th? Is that, you've been through the process, is that an adequate amount of notice for them?
I think for me it was, specifically because it was a month-and-a-half long process. And so during that entire month and a half was study session for me in regards to preparation for a potential interview. So I think if they have put their applications in and they've had the opportunity to do it for the last month and a half. I think it's more than enough time for them to put together whatever it is that they need, and the fact that if we make a decision now, they already know in a month, if I get this opportunity, I will be interviewing. So,
Are there any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Urban?
Do we need to decide a little bit about how we're going to do the interviewing as part of the process? Here, for example, do we have the same set of questions we ask all the candidates, or do we simply have them make a presentation under a certain time limit? What do we need to decide, if anything, tonight regarding what happens on the 16th? Or can we wait to do that later?
Commissioner Cooney?
We do have a process that we followed when we had an opening on the city commission. And I would say that we should follow the same process in interviewing these people as we did when there were openings with the city commission.
Well, may I
Yes.
add? Well, for my edification and perhaps for the audiences, could someone quickly review what exactly we did then? Because that was 4 years ago for me when we did that. I recall the people being able to make presentations, but I don't recall what we did to make sure we treated everybody equally from our questions. Or
Attorney Robbins, can you help us out with that?
Yeah, I can. Well, I'm going to borrow heavily from the city clerk's memo of September 26th, in which he outlined the kind of history of filling the vacancies, and looking at what happened the last term. I don't know that there is one method. I think that, and I'm going to defer to Scott in terms of recollection, but I believe each candidate was interviewed singly as opposed to asking the same question and get 6 different answers. I believe each candidate had a few minutes to make an opening statement. Then there were questions posed by various commissioners. I think there was a set of questions that the same commissioner generally asked the same question, and then the candidate was given a minute or two to answer that question, and then afterward, I think they had an opportunity to sum up, and then you moved on to the next candidate. Clerk Borling, if I misstated that, you can correct me.
Okay, so the way it happened was, first of all, on the winnowing, just so you know, the way it worked is there were 15 applicants, and at a public meeting, there was a paper ballot, and and the ballot had all 15 applicants on it. Each commissioner was instructed to pick 4. And then what happened was any candidate that received at least 2 votes got interviewed. That's the way that winnowing happened. And that took it from 15 down to, it was either 7 or 8. Well, I think it was 7, and then on the night of the interviews, the first candidate dropped out in his opening statement. So then what happened is the city commissioners were asked to submit questions to me that they wanted to see as interview questions. And so I compiled those, and at the time, on the night of the interviews, each candidate was given 2 minutes to make an opening statement, and then commissioners asked that list of questions kind of in a round-robin fashion. So that's how it happened.
Commissioner Cunningham?
I think that then presents another problem, because if we have 40 applicants and we all get 2 choices, it could potentially be a situation where nobody gets two votes from a commission, and under those circumstances, I mean, I think we need to really vet that through to see how do we dwindle that number down even more too.
Commissioner Urban?
Well, I thought that was what we would do on that first meeting on the 8th, is do the winnowing there without interviews, just going through the applications as that were transmitted to us, to do that in advance. So, because we, in that sense, we're differing from what happened with the last time we picked a person to fill a vacancy. We're having an extra step here to do the winnowing on a work session night. And doesn't that help?
Commissioner Cunningham.
So I'm assuming, just to sum up, what you're saying is on the 8th or whatever that first work session is, we will dwindle it down to maybe 20, and then in the next meeting select, or next open meeting, select the 2 that we're going to, or we toss in our 2, and I'm just figuratively speaking, toss in our 2 that we're going to actually vote to get an interview, and then in the following meeting, so we're looking at 3 meetings to get that done.
I'm going to jump in real quick. What I heard a few minutes ago was we were going to use a work session on January 8th to look at the total pool and winnow it down to 6 applicants in that open space. And then on the 16th, at our second business meeting of the month of January, we'll take that opportunity to pick up the previous city commission process, whereby candidates will have 2 minutes to present their top lines. We'll have submitted questions to the clerk, and then we'll kind of go round robin with those questions. Is that what we were hearing?
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes?
I think 2 questions. One, does that then mean we come in to the first business meeting in February to vote on? Or is that something that happens on the meeting on the 16th? And then, well, maybe I'll leave that one and then ask my second question after that.
The way I understand it, you would be coming to the meeting on the 8th with each of you having your top 6. There'd be some process to score all of them together to come up with 6 from that night that you would then vote on to interview on the 16th.
That's an answer.
Gotcha. So we will be voting on the same night that they interview then? Or will we be voting the next meeting after they do interviews?
I think you can select based on that night.
Okay.
If you feel comfortable with the, and that again would be by consensus as well, so.
Can we commit to having a break in that meeting before we have to vote? I
Absolutely.
know how my mind works, and I know I need processing time, so.
Commissioner Anderson, did you have a question or a comment?
I was only going to say, I appreciate you representing that. I think that's accurate. I think that it is, on the night of winnowing, I mean, it's not, seems to me that it was not all clean and easy when we have done this before. I mean, sometimes you have to vote a couple times. You kind of see how things are playing out here, and you know that your goal is to get to 6. And so sometimes that takes a revote. It seemed like we did that, if I can remember right. It wasn't just boom, decided the first time. It's like you see where you're going, and then you have set yourself a task to get to 6, and however that works. So,
Clerk Burling?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Just a couple of observations. In the 3 times I've been through the commission vacancy appointment process, the commission has voted on the night of the interviews to make that appointment. So that's what's happened in the past. And I just want to kind of maybe offer as a, I don't want to say a suggestion, but there are options for how the winnowing happens. For example, if you have an exceptionally large number, say 60 applicants, you could say each commissioner chooses 3 in the first round of winnowing, and those 21 are in, like there's no cutoff, and then you go down from there. So there are options, and at the January 2nd meeting, that could be an opportunity to maybe talk about the specifics of that a little further, because we'll know at that point how many applications we're actually dealing with, and give us some, us a chance to think maybe what, mathematically is a good way to do that.
More into the microphone, please.
Sure. I was just saying there are different options for how you do the winnowing, and at the January 2nd meeting, we'll know at that point how many applications there are, and there can maybe be a little bit more discussion of that process, so we walk into January 8th kind of knowing, what to expect. and that'll give staff time to think about that number, you know, the mathematics of narrowing it down.
Okay.
Are there any other commissioner comments before we turn it over to citizen comments? Do we need a motion first? Okay. Is there a motion for action? Sorry. I mean, go ahead, Commissioner Sykes.
So is the motion, well, so is the motion to approve the process as written? Does it matter that we've sort of like added dates and, you know, or does it need to be a new?
Well, you've had a general discussion, you need to make a formal motion, and one of those, part of that motion, although you've generally outlined a process, I don't know that you've necessarily nailed it down, but you certainly have indicated a time frame, and one of the things you're going to have to do is amend the schedule that you already adopted this evening for next year's meetings, which would include a special meeting on the 8th for the purpose of narrowing the candidate pool. Now, how, and you can say, and at that candidate, you can remain somewhat flexible, because as the clerk has pointed out, you can decide that night, okay, we've all reviewed whether it's 28 or 58 candidate resumes, how you want to go about narrowing that pool in terms of who you're going to interview the following week.
Commissioner Anderson.
Does that mean we need two separate motions, or can we amend our meeting agenda for next year as part of this motion?
I think you can do part of that motion.
Okay, I don't know if I can do any better, but, so I am proposing that, that we basically follow the process that was proposed to us relative to selecting our at-large position, and that as part of that proposal that we would be approving, that we are including items that we have, you know, discussed this evening relative to taking, you know, looking at all the applications, that we have set ourselves some dates in that discussion. And that date includes amending our calendar. Sorry this is so long, but amending our calendar for next year to add a meeting on January 8th, and also intending that we would do interviews on the 16th, and that potentially would be making a decision that night on the 16th. Is that?
Commissioner Anderson made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Supported by Commissioner Cooney. Citizen comment? All right. Thank you, AC Lamb. Would anyone in the audience like to address this issue? If so, please come to the microphone and give us your name and whether you live in the city, and you'll have 4 minutes. Seeing no one, commissioners, we are at discussion. Commissioner Sykes.
At the risk of really irritating my colleagues and everybody in the room, I will apologize and just say that I so appreciate this discussion and the fact that we were able to hash all of this out up here on the dais and figure this out in a relatively quick, productive manner. So thank you all.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Urban.
I just wanted to add that the what you didn't mention but was implied in your motion is that the meeting on the 8th is for the purpose of winnowing the candidate list down to a manageable number, should we just say? Right, we've been saying 6. Do we want to say 6 exactly? All right, 6 it is. So that's just a bit of clarification. I'm not proposing that as an amendment to yours because, but I did want to have it be clear for purposes of public notice that people know what that special meeting is for. That's all.
Is there any other discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Borling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cooney.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Sykes.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Knott.
Yes. The motion passes. Next are reports and legislation. City Manager Ritzma, do you have any reports?
I do not this evening.
City Attorney?
Vice Mayor, I do not.
Clerk Borling?
Yes, thank you. Commissioners, in your packet, you do have the report of determination from the Local Officers Compensation Commission. This group is a public body established by city ordinance under state enabling legislation, and the purpose of the group, the work they do, is to establish the compensation for elected officials in the city. The LOCC met on December 13th, last Wednesday, and they did come up with a determination to increase pay for all of the elected officials, mayor, vice mayor, and city commissioners. And I do, at this time, want to invite Creed Stiegel, who was the chair of the LOCC, just to make some remarks, and if you have any questions.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, Commissioners. Our determination came about as merely $1 a day when you actually add up what it is. We didn't try to go by a percentage like we did a year ago, 2 years ago, which we gave 1% raise. But prior to that, the commission had turned down several times of getting a raise. And I think that the city is in a better position now that, and with the cost of living, I think that that was part of our determination of trying to consider some of the things that you, just like you've just gone through, you know, diligently handling the city business. So hopefully you'll accept this gesture for the work you do. We really appreciate it. And we only get together every 2 years, so we really put a lot of work into it in consideration of how much work you guys do. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's all, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Next is the opportunity for citizen comments. Anyone wishing to address the commission on any topic, please come forward to the podium, give your name and whether or not you live in the city. You'll have 4 minutes to make your comments.
I'm Frank Warren. I live on Lynn Terrace. You know, last Tuesday, we had a presentation over to Sealy Ford, and I got to thank Commissioner Urbans for coming over and being there with us for the day, for a while. Also, Mike Sealy talked to me about they're going to do another monument in front of his building at the dealership. It's going to cost him $50,000 for that monument. It's going to be steel and glass. I think the glass is going to be etched in at the scene at the Iwo Jima raising of the flag, American flag on Iwo Jima. He's going to have that in front of his building. I think that's in honor of his dad, who was shot in the eye, I think, over in Iwo Jima. He was decorated by Harry Truman. And I was very, very pleased to know that we had 2 county commissioners there, too. And, you know, I'm very proud of what I can do for our community. This is what us veterans try to do in the community, is try to make our community a better place to live by looking out for those who appreciate what veterans do in Kalamazoo. And, you know, Sealy has always went a little bit more overboard for veterans than veterans ask. I know veterans have been to his place and asked for help, and they've got it. Now, one veteran came in there and got his car fixed for nothing because he couldn't afford it. This is the kind of person Sealy are. Sealy's a great group of people. And you know, when the 48 sent me down this plaque to give to him, I felt very, very humble to give both of them out, which one was from the American Legion Department of Michigan, and the other one came out of Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm supposed to be going down this next week to talk to our correspondent National down there about some other issues. And also, I think we're going to be doing a thing next year. We're going to be trying to put together and getting the honor flight nationwide to authorize us to make a pin, but we can sell and give them back that money. Every time we do a event, we give the money back. It's like we have an association called the Boxcar Association. We take that money and we get to our Promenade National, wherever it's held at. We have a children's party there. We give the children gifts, take them riding on our rolling stock, and when we're done there, we're broke. We start over again, raising more money for the next year. Last year, they raised over $40,000 and gave it away to different outfits that had children. So, you know, that's what the veterans do. And I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is John Bradshaw, and I'm a city resident, and I'm a member of the Kalamazoo Municipal Golf Association. I'm here again tonight to fulfill the KMGA's obligation to keep the City Commission informed as to all the great things that are happening at the city golf courses, and that's Red Arrow, Eastern Hills, and Millen Park Golf Club. Overall, the revenue for the 3 courses is projected to be up $35,000 from last year. Also, as some of you know, one of the most fun and popular ways to raise funds for major nonprofit organizations such as WMU and the Bronson Burn Center and other smaller groups in the city is to have golf outings during the summer months. This year, those fundraising outings increased from 10 to 16 at Millen Park, from 18 to 21 at Eastern Hills Golf Club, and these groups raised in excess of $150,000 for city charities. This year, our Director of Golf, Dean Marks, received the 2017 Player Development Award from the Michigan section of the PGA for his work with junior golf development programs, teaching veterans, and coaching college women's golf. Mr. Mark, Kalamazoo Junior Golf Association had 365 participants this year, which is a large increase over last year, and each one of those junior participants received a free membership to Red Arrow Golf Club. This summer, 35 kids per week used the courses through the Kalamazoo City Parks and Recreation Department. The Eastern Hills Middle School League had 66 participants. The Eastern Hills Golf Club hosted junior varsity girls golf matches of 40 students from 8 local high schools each week during the golf season. Course personnel gave over 200 private lessons, of which 1/3 of those were to developing junior golfers. And finally, there were almost 65,000 rounds of golf played in the city courses this year. So overall, the courses continue to be an accessible and affordable public recreation asset of the city. They act as just one of many elements which help make Kalamazoo a vibrant and exciting city, and a city where people want to live, work, play, and raise their families. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Alfonso Harris. I live on the north side of Kalamazoo. I just wanted to give a shout out to the Family Health Center. I had to go in today, along with checking my weight, my blood pressure, and my temp. I appreciate they asked what my gender was, and they also asked what my sexual orientation was. I feel that all healthcare providers should be asking those questions so they can fully and properly care for their patients. I'd also like to wish a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's to all sexual and racial minorities. I wish it to be a new year that's free from hate crimes, sexual harassment, domestic violence, bullying, suicide, unemployment, disrespect, homelessness, sexual assault, and rape. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
What's up, everybody? Chris Wumhoff, 1407 Bryant Street. Gonna read off a note tonight to try to get it all. I am here tonight to ask for the Commission to approve plans to build the Edison Ducks in a Row program on 1430 Bryant Street. I was hoping to be the first person to ask something of our chief also. I apparently need to ask the chief of police for our law to have a small draft animal, and I'll get to it, but that's a part of this, and I was hoping to ask her. This program, it uses waste. We partner with the EPA, and we take waste and we reuse it, food waste, to teach kids how to feed and interact with birds, teaching farming, and then also for materials, taking things like old recycled tires and making uses out of them. I'm at the point where I'm asking you guys because I filed last month for a property that I didn't want to file for a variance for because I was told it was the only one. It turned out I could actually file for the property I owned across the street as well. So I filed for that. The price increased $500, and now I have to build a house on this same property. I've submitted plans, a 40-page plan that shows the house that I want to build. Showed the plans over 7 days ago. It did not get a response, and now I've missed the opportunity to get on next month's zoning board. So I just want to ask, at this point, I want to ask you guys, I've had so much trouble with the city. They forwarded my mom to the cemetery at one point. I've paid over $4,000 in fines in the last 2 years over the ducks. This includes a year where I lost everybody. I lost my entire board the first 3 months of last year. And the city has beat the crap out of me for it. I got 3 charges at me, and at this point, I just want to be able to build this program. The last 2 times I've been in the hospital for a checkup, I've had to go to the ER. I don't get to have forever, and I've been a farmer for a long time, and I want to get the opportunity to build something and help these kids in this neighborhood that I got to grow up having that none of them get. And I want to get the opportunity to show them little things I can do, like teach them microgreening so that they can make a career with a vacant property in Edison. And if I can get the opportunity, I can do that. At this point, fine, if I need to pay $500 for something that should be zone compliant already, if that's the fee I need to pay so that I can build this program across the street, then I would like to do that. That's fine. I'm just asking at this point, will the city give me permission to build a program to help the kids in my neighborhood on the property I own? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name is Justin Song. Hi, I also help out with the animals. They're a very good benefit to me. They actually, let me be brief to you. I had a history of losing my temper a lot. And when I got to these ducks, I became more mellow and pretty much calmed down. As you can tell, Mr. Cunningham. You missed that? And well, basically, I enjoy these animals. And you guys try to take them away from me? What the heck, man? Why? And I don't appreciate the county coming up at 8 o'clock in the morning when I'm trying to take a bath or something. Ask me to show me my hands. I'm generally a non-violent person. I don't carry weapons. I don't need weapons. I don't even use my fists. I tried talking to people. I've got a very high IQ in some places, or low in some other. And these ducks are like good therapy animals to me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Justin, do you live in the city?
Yes, ma'am. I live at 1407 Bryant Street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Knott.
Good evening.
Good evening. Andrew Argo. I live at 1106 South Park Street. Mostly wanted to just come up here in solidarity with and in support of Chris Wamoff's Ducks in a Row program. All I can really add to what he said, I grew up in the Edison neighborhood myself, just a few blocks away from where Chris does his program. And, particularly, from what I've seen and heard from people in the neighborhood, it is an extremely vital program. Not only that, but I think something that really, Chris didn't touch on is the educational aspect of that program is very, very important, especially as we move forward into trying to build kind of self-sufficient, self-sustaining communities, particularly in neighborhoods like the Edison and the North Side, where there's a larger focus on people learning skills conducive to greening and growing and, having these kind of, knowledge about these sort of, excuse me, farm animals that they wouldn't normally have in an urban setting. So, I would say particularly for the years ahead, this is going to be only an increasingly vital program. I think it would be very beneficial of the city to put its support behind it and other programs like it. Two other things I wanted to hit on real quick while I'm up here. This is just kind of plant a bug in the Commission's ear, but this is going to be a very important topic that I feel like everyone's going to be hearing a lot more about. With the vote that happened last week in regards to net neutrality, a lot of local municipalities have been talking about municipal broadband. I feel this city, we would have the resources for such an undertaking. Obviously, I'm not coming up here with any kind of formal plan, but I think it would be very important for our community to start looking into this, not only because of the fact that the ramifications of net neutrality could make broadband more expensive, and speaking as someone who grew up a low-income resident, having the internet at one's fingertips as a resource can make all the difference, and especially when we talk about neighborhoods like Edison and the North Side, where we have a lot of low-income individuals who are struggling with graduation rates, having that access to what is essentially an infinite encyclopedia is an incredible and an important tool. And if the federal government is working with telecoms to take that away, I feel like the city should step in and help provide that as a resource. I want to just close out by speaking really quickly about the foundation. I want to thank the rep from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation for kind of explaining the process and talking about the board members. When the decision comes about approving this board and looking at that at-large person, one of the things I really want to tip on is that, one of my initial fears about the foundation itself was how it compares to a trickle-down economic model. So it is my hope that when this board is constituted, they can make sure to avoid the pratfalls of that. And what I mean, and I'll just be very quick about this, is making sure we focus on growing local business, local community co-ops, rather than relying on outside entities to come in and create jobs, because those jobs can always go away.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Nora Getz. I do live in the city of Kalamazoo, Vine neighborhood, 302 West Walnut Street. I'm actually a resident of a co-op, a housing co-op. I can vouch for that. A couple of things I wanted to go over. First of all, in the last few meetings, I forgot to properly recognize and congratulate those who have successfully either won election or re-election. Congrats to Commissioners Cunningham, Urban, and Knott, new Vice Mayor, and even Hopewell. You've fought a competitive campaign, you've earned it. One thing I guess I've really noticed a theme, like in almost all of yours while running, is the emphasis on education. And it's, for those reasons, I do also want to come up in support of the Ducks in a Row program, as well as local municipal broadbands. A lot of kids in the Edison neighborhood, these are some things that we really take for granted. They haven't really, before the Ducks in a Row program, they've never seen a real duck up in person. It's mind-blowing even to hear this stuff. And to actually be able to have these animals nearby and to have like some conceptual and close to home example of what farming can look like, then there's a lot of potential to learn, even like, science, biology, all that good stuff. And I'm gonna, echo what Andy was saying on net neutrality as well. It is immensely important. What the FCC did last week was tremendously unpopular, and the city has a great opportunity in order to spread what we already have in Bronson Park. Local city provided internet to the rest of the town, and that could do tremendous things for the people. If you look at places like even Nashville and Chattanooga, Tennessee, they've seen nothing but good things for it. South Korea has the same thing almost nationwide, and they have the best internet in the world. It's a system that works. What else? I do want to commend that there has been, like, I guess, a bit of an extension in the decisions of the Foundation for Excellence Board with the extra meeting, and looking at who's been nominated so far is actually, and with the process going right now, it seems to be like, right now it's a little bit better than expected even. It does seem diverse. A lot of us are from the city, which is fantastic. One thing I do notice that is missing is that it doesn't seem like there's anybody on the list, at least that I know of, that's transgender or even LGBT as far as I can tell. When violence against our communities especially have been getting higher and higher over the years, putting us in positions of power don't always guarantee that things will get better, but getting us out there, making sure that we're represented in positions that matter can do tremendous things for our community. I think that's all I have to say. Happy holidays and have a happy new year as well.
Thank you. Are there any other citizen comments tonight?
Hi there.
Good evening.
My name is Melissa Ray. I'm not a resident of the city of Kalamazoo. However, I have interests here and children here, so I stand in solidarity with Chris as well. The Ducks in a Row program can bring some very valuable things to this community, and I think it's important that you all remember that your role is for the community. Your role is not big business. Your role is not the upper leadership of this community who's running it into the ground. Your commitment is to the community. Please take that very seriously. You are not God, okay? You need to function like you understand that, please, for our community.
Thank you. Are there any other citizen comments? Seeing none at this time, we are at commissioner comments. Commissioner Sykes.
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor Knott. I am still not used to going first, but that's okay. So a couple of things I want to note. I will also extend my support for Edison Ducks in a Row. And I'm going to be really clear. What this process looks like, what's already transpired, is still very murky to me. So I don't know if maybe it's a matter of meeting either with you, City Manager Ritzmar, or City Attorney Robinson, to try and clarify for my own purposes what exactly has been going on and what needs to be figured out.
Yeah, we can provide background information to the commission, and then if you have questions, follow up.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Because I would like to see if there is some way that we can reach some sort of something, but you all will fill me in on the process. I'll say that the first time that I met the Ducks was, I think, early in 2015. I have 4 little ones that love to interact and don't always get a chance to because I work too often to take them further out of the city to get to engage with folks, and thanks to Chris Wamhoff, they've had a chance to do that within city limits. So I appreciate that. Look forward to that conversation. I also just want to reiterate my thanks for my colleagues up on the commission and also Kalamazoo Community Foundation. I think President Pickett-Erway has left already, but I just want to reiterate again, I know it's no secret that there are some aspects of this process that have been very important to me, one being the diversity of that board. And I am so grateful that we are looking at the list of candidates and board members that we are. I also want to take a quick moment to acknowledge the Kalamazoo Valley Museum. I received a call last week from a gentleman in our community who went to the museum with his girlfriend, was not aware of the Hateful Things exhibit at the museum, just sort of stumbled along the exhibit. I'd like to say again, if you have not seen it, I highly suggest it. But he felt very blindsided by the images that he was looking at. He did not notice the poster on the wall as he walked past into the exhibit, and was blindsided by some very hurtful imagery, and didn't have a good experience. He gave me a call, he gave the director of the museum a call, he also called the president of the NAACP. After he and I had a chance to speak, and I had a chance to speak with the director over at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum, we went in today to meet and sit down and talk about what could have made this exhibit less harmful for him. And I am happy to say that after 30 minutes of sitting in this room, there was a consensus on how to move forward, how this exhibit could continue to exist, but also honor his concerns. And I had expected that this would be something we'd look at in the future for future exhibits. But no, the Kalamazoo Valley Museum is going to work on making these changes within the next week, even though the exhibit only has a month left to stand. So I so value the director of the museum for being willing to go through that process with us. And so I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the museum for being who they are. And also, we'll just say I am very interested in looking into municipal broadband, and we'll keep an eye out and try to learn more and hope that our Congress does the right thing. And with that, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's to all of you, because I don't intend to see you before then. Thanks so much. You guys have a great night.
Commissioner Anderson?
Two things this evening. One is I would recognize, I'd like all of us to keep our mayor in our thoughts and prayers this evening for the next few days. I know that he has had to leave early tonight related to some situation with his family, and I know it was obviously concerning to him, so I hope we're thinking about him and his family tonight. I think that's important. In addition, you know, people out in the Northwest have experienced a really horrific accident of pretty major proportions related to what they were hoping was going to be a fantastic inaugural trip of a high-speed train connecting Seattle and Portland, which experienced a really unbelievable accident and wreck today. Unfortunately, actually above a highway that was crowded with cars as well. So I know that there are many, many serious injuries. There are fatalities as well. And these were folks, I think, some who were taking this inaugural trip in a way to celebrate the fact that we had created this connection opportunity for folks. So I think that's a sad thing. I'm sure there are many, many people grieving this evening about that event, and it's not going to be over soon for many, many families. So just want to recognize that.
Commissioner Cooney.
So I would like to congratulate the people in the community that have been standing out in front of the congressman's office to protest this tax bill, which is going to do such harm to people in our community. And there will be another demonstration tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And I think it's really important because as this tax bill goes into place, there will be less money available to spend on things that our people need, like healthcare, education, and the basic needs of the cities. So it's really important that we take a stand on this, and people in this community have done a great job letting their voices be heard, and I would encourage people to be out there tomorrow at 5 o'clock.
Thank you. Commissioner Urban.
There we go. Now it's on. moved by the people who came up to speak about the Ducks in a Row program, and I hope we can find a way to accommodate that. The neighbors in the community have a lot to have a stake in this too, surrounding that area, and I'd like to hear from them as well. So I'm going to be actively trying to learn more about what you're trying to do. I have affection for ducks as well, and so it's hard to walk away from your request. So thank you for coming down. That's all.
Commissioner Cunningham.
So first I want to say congratulations to our WMU graduates. We have had some new bachelors, doctors, and masters in our community. I always consider this time to invest into those who may be here temporarily, but I definitely love to see that core group of individuals stay here. Unfortunately, a lot of them leave. So, you know, I think that's when we talk about economic development, that's a population we really want to reach out to and make sure that we're engaging to keep them here. So I'm excited about that. I didn't say much in regards to the Kalamazoo Foundation and the work that they did. I think it was amazing. I think within the time frame, I was very pleased with the outcome. I think for me, one of my major things that I wanted to make sure is that those who are seated at this new Foundation for Excellence weren't the same people who were seated for a lot of other committees or things that we do within the community. So I'm glad to see the new faces. I'm appreciative of that. So thank you to Carrie Pickett, her way, for the work that she's done. The Red Arrow was brought up on a couple occasions. I know Mr. Bradshaw mentioned it, but that core group had mentioned turning my favorite golf course into a parking lot, and I will not be an advocate for that. Growing up as an East Side kid, you know, not to say that I played golf or that I went there often, but you know that it's an intriguing spot. And once I did become more business-minded, and I wanted to, I guess, move from basketball to a different sport, that was one location that, you know, not only did I have the finances to afford, but it was a comfortable location where, you know, I was comfortable with engaging that environment. So I'm appreciative for what Red Arrow means to me as a youth growing up in Kalamazoo. When we talk about net neutrality, I do see the importance of this decision that was recently made, but I am not an expert, so for all of those who brought that conversation up today, please send information to me via email, via Facebook inbox, however that is. I would like to look further into that information. And also, most importantly, this is Christmas, this is New Year's. When we talk about this time, a couple things come to mind when we talk about mental health and those who are around us who may be dealing with things that we may not realize. Some people will be lonely for the holidays, so if you get an opportunity, please show that love. Another thing is we have our elderly population who is running into snow issues. Make sure that you go by a friend or family, shovel out where you can. And then, you know, to my colleagues, thank you for your sacrifice. One thing that was brought up in regards to our new police chief was the sacrifice that the family and those around us have to sacrifice in order for us to do our job. And if you do not know, there's a lot of sacrifice in regards to maybe our children, or as we saw today, our mayor who had to leave abruptly. But I think this is a time where we gather together, we show a little more love, whatever that looks like. We show a little more compassion, whatever that looks like. And once again, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year's, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the new year if I don't see you by then.
Thank you. So I have a couple of items tonight. I'll start first by saying, Frank, thanks for all you do. I was disappointed that I was unable to attend the event at Sealy. I had a work commitment that had me out of town, but I promise you, you continue to throw opportunities our way that I will be, if not at the next one, at one very soon. So thank you for...
There's going to be another dedication, too.
All right. I know that you're going to make us...
I'll let you know.
All right, thank you. I know that you're going to make us aware. You know, Commissioner Sykes had mentioned she hopes Congress is going to do the right thing. I don't share that optimism as it relates to the, you know, FCC, net neutrality, or the egregious tax bill. I'm not holding my breath in either manner. Been working on both policy initiatives and received some very interesting information about municipal broadband in the last couple of days that I can disseminate to my colleagues as just at least something to be thinking about. Local municipalities that are considering this for two reasons. One, just being progressive and proactive, but also to responding to the potential of net neutrality changing. I'd also like to mention, Nora, your comments have not been lost on me as it relates to the gap identified in the Foundation for Excellence Board of Directors. I think that the foundation did an outstanding job. I went into the process recognizing that not every demographic would probably be seated on the board, but as a member of the LGBT community, it is a gap that I was immediately aware of, and I agree 100%. When you're thinking about transgender individuals, particularly trans women of color, and the amount of violence that are subjected to those folks, putting people from the LGBT community in positions of leadership and power, it's not going to solve the problem, but it definitely helps mitigate some of the problem and pain and suffering that happens on a daily basis within that community. So your comments rang to my heart. I had asked earlier in the evening, I think before you came in, Carrie Pickett-Orway to give us the evaluation process and best practice, and it will be something that's on the forefront as we continue to seat new members to the board. How do we dig deeper within that community to find qualified candidates to serve? What else is on my list? I guess the last item would be making my colleagues aware that earlier today I had a conversation with City Manager Ritzema and Assistant City Manager Lamb as it relates to the budget. You may recall I was quiet last week during the process, taking the information in, had some time to dig into the document and made some notes, particularly as it relates to our neighborhood associations. Since about 2001, the associations have been pretty much flat at around $41,000. Well, that's for the higher-end neighborhood associations. So we have two buckets. You have a couple groups receiving about $20K, a couple groups receiving about $40K with no, even cost of living increases, right? It's a flat fee. Their contract has looked pretty much the same, and they're struggling. And this is something I've been talking about for a couple of years now. I feel that the neighborhood associations are an extension of our city staff, right? They are on the front lines. They're an intermediary that oftentimes take those first calls for service, whether it's public safety calls, nuisance complaints, code violations, you name it. They are saving our staff time and money by mitigating some of those initial calls that come in. So through the conversation, we took a look at the line item in the budget. It's about $215,000. And without talking about moving money around from different line items, but if right now we only have 5 associations that are funded with about $40,000 kind of earmarked potentially for 2 other associations. One would be Stewart, and they gave their money back last year. And then we continue to have money maybe set aside for Douglas, but they're not in a position at this point in time to receive formal funding. So the conversation evolved, is there an opportunity to award that $40,000 to the associations? It's not a lot of money, but it would help. And so I think that staff is going to take a look at, could the associations receive a bump this year, and look into how that bump and for what we would be getting for that bump. Would it be just a flat go along with their contract, or would it be something to incentivize them to increase their capacity for long-term sustainability? So those conversations are to continue, but I wanted to make you aware that I had that discussion today with staff. So with that, we are adjourned.